Well, thank you so much for everyone who's joining us right now. Welcome to our 5th Town Hall, of course, focusing on BC. My name's Vicky. I'm the Leadership Contest Coordinator, and I'm really thrilled that we have all of you here this evening. I just wanted to let you know before passing this over to our moderators that tonight's session is going to be recorded so that people who aren't here are able to watch it later. I also wanted to let you know that the chat has been disabled for this, but we invite you to participate in the conversation on Twitter using the hashtags GPC, CDN Poli, and the other leadership contest. You can also participate in the conversation on our volunteer Slack workspace. If you aren't on that and need an invite, you can just send an email to support@greenparty.ca and we'll be happy to add you. I'm really thrilled that tonight we have our very own Green MP, Paul Manley, acting as one of the moderators, as well as Jonina Campbell, Deputy Leader of the BC Greens. We're really excited to have you here sharing your experience and raising the issues that matter most to your constituents and the people in your communities. So thank you so much, and take it away.
All right, well, thank you very much, Vicky. I'm Paul Manley. I'm the Member of Parliament for Nanaimo Ladysmith. I'd like to recognize that I am on the traditional territory of Nanaimo First Nation, and that my riding also encompasses the territories of Snanawas, Dominis, and Layaxon. So I'm grateful to them to live and learn and love on this land that I'm here on in British Columbia. So I'm going to just I'll pass it on to Jonina, and then I'll come back with a little bit of the ground rules.
Thanks, Paul. My name's Jonina Campbell, and it's an honor to be here. I want to recognize that I am on the traditional and unceded territories of the Kakite First Nations and all Coast Salish people, and it's a privilege to be here tonight to co-host and co-moderate with Paul Manley. Thank you.
So thank you all for stepping up to run for leadership. It's a real challenge. I know what you're up for, having been in 2 elections last year. We're going to do a different kind of format. We're going to give everybody a 1-minute introduction, and then we had over 160 questions submitted. So we're going to give everybody. We're going to have a series of questions, and everybody gets a 1-minute response. At 45 seconds, either Jonina or I will wave a yellow card, and at 60 seconds, we will wave this and thank you very much and cut you off and move on to the next person. Each of you gets 3 rebuttals, and so use them wisely. Your rebuttals are good for 30 seconds. If you have been directly targeted by another candidate and accused of something, or something that we feel that needs a response, we'll give you 15 seconds to respond, but we hope that everybody plays fair and plays nice. After the 1-minute questions, we're going to go on to a series of 30-second questions, rapid responses. And you may not know it, but in the House of Commons, when I get a question in the House of Commons, I have 35 seconds to frame the question, ask the question, and the minister has 35 seconds to answer. And if you're not done, your mic's cut off and the speaker stands up and you got to stop. So I hope that you respect those rules and that we just carry on here, and we'll blast through as many of the 160 questions as we can. And with that, I'm going to let Jonina give you the order of. We're going to rotate the order through from the intros through to the questions, and we'll carry on like that. So everybody gets a chance to go first and last.
Yeah, 160 questions. Right. Okay, so we're going to start with opening comments, and you each have a minute to make your opening comment. And just in addition to what Paul said, you will also have an opportunity at the end of the town hall to have a closing comment. We felt that that was important to add that in as well. And so I'm going to call your name, and you have 1 minute. And I think Paul is going to time that. So what we're going to do is, while I'm facilitating, Paul will time. And while he's facilitating, I will time. So opening statements, we're going to start with Amita Kuttner.
Thank you very much. I am speaking with you all today from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, though my regular home is on unceded Slayaaman territory on Lasqueti Island, close to Paul. I was born and grew up in BC, but like many, I am a guest on these lands. I am beyond honored to be sharing a collective vision for the party and the country centered around justice, credibility, and preparedness. Equity, decolonization, and science are going to be crucial lenses through which we develop policy about issues throughout Canada as we face the era of crises that we're in. The climate crisis, the mental health crisis, the inequality crisis are all very personal to me, given my experience of losing my mother and my home to a mudslide in North Vancouver in 2005. This is the perfect moment to have a scientist, an astrophysicist to communicate and inspire, and someone who has been through climate disaster so that we have a trauma-informed approach. I'm looking forward to the discussions tonight, and thank you.
Well timed.
Yeah. Thank you, Amita. Our next candidate that we'll hear an opening comment from is Courtney Howard.
Thank you. I'm coming to you from beautiful Chief Dry Geese territory. These are the traditional lands of the Yellowknives Dene and the North Slave Métis in the Northwest Territories. I'm actually from North Vancouver, so I lived on Burnaby Mountain when I went to Simon Fraser University, did med school at UBC, and then did my family practice in Victoria. So that has helped me be connected to that province as I helped to set up the BC chapter for the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. So I've been very involved in discussions around the Trans Mountain Pipeline, around fracking, around LNG, and really am very invested in those conversations. I now live in one of the most rapidly warming places on Earth and have spent about the last decade doing research, policy, and advocacy work at the intersection of climate change and health. I propose a platform where we focus on a well-being economy and have an evidence-based approach to supporting the social and economic and ecological determinants of health to lay it all out from there to help us get through this crisis. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Courtney. Our next candidate is David Mirner.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much, Jonina and Paul and all the organizers of this meeting. I'm coming to you from Saanich, British Columbia, the traditional territory of the Esquimalt, the Wasanic, the Sauk, the Sequent, and the Songhees First Nations. I live here with my wife, Anami, and my daughter, Rebecca, who's going into grade 12, and 3 of our daughters have grown up and moved on to other pastures. I just want to say to all that it's a thrill to be here with these fantastic leadership candidates, because I think what we will do once this campaign is over is form a fantastic team. We're facing a mortal danger, global climate emergency. We're facing mass species extinction. We see it in our lands and waters here in British Columbia, with the salmon and the southern resident killer whales disappearing, the old growth forest disappearing. We have serious challenges ahead, and we need a Green Party that is progressive, credible, effective. And we need a leader who can lead us in both official languages, win his seat, and unite our party. That's what I offer in this campaign. I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, David, so much. Okay, our next candidate we're going to hear from is Andrew West. Oh, need to hear you. Yeah.
Yep. I got it. Thank you, everyone. The first thing that I'd like to acknowledge is the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation is having an event either online or in March in October to bring recognition to murdered and missing Indigenous women. And I encourage you, if there's a similar event across the country, to please join that. I want to keep the Green Party relevant and in the center and get us elected. I believe that that's our way to get past, the way for us to pass our truly meaningful legislation. We have great, amazing policies that help our people and our planet. And I think the way that we can get elected is to start turning our policies into legislation, is to show people that we are a truly financially responsible party, that we can bring in our policies and have fiscal responsibility at the same time. If we pitch this as a win-win option for Canadians, we're going to attract voters all across Canada, and this is our way that we will get elected. I look forward to a spirited debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, our next candidate we'll hear from is Judy Green.
Thank you and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us here tonight. I was actually born in British Columbia. I grew up in the Okanagan. I now live in Mi'kma'ki, which is Nova Scotia. It's the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Willalan, Ukjilasit, welcome, come take your place here. It's important to me to be able to represent all across Canada. I've lived in 5 provinces. I do have a master's in computer science. I've done a cross-disciplinary thesis in growing and maintaining highly effective groups, which I've presented to international conferences around the world. I'm a small business owner, and I have a lifetime of service. I started with volunteering as a junior vice president of the Junior Humane Society. I sat on police commissions, chambers of commerce, where I've had the opportunity to explore co-leadership. I'm a published author, and I tripled the vote in West Nova and came in 3rd place, winning the student vote last year. So I would like you to join me on this journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy. And our next candidate is Dimitri Lascaris.
Good evening, everyone. I come to you from Montreal and the unceded lands of the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation. I'm a lawyer, journalist, and activist. After graduating from the University of Toronto, I worked as a securities lawyer on Wall Street and in Paris, France. As a securities lawyer, I saw firsthand how the powerful can bend the legal system to their will. So I left Wall Street, returned to Canada, and built the largest team of securities class actions lawyers in the country. My team recovered $500 million from major corporations, including the Chinese National Petroleum Corporation and SNC-Lavalin. As a result of my efforts to hold the corporate sector accountable, Canadian Business Magazine named me as one of the 50 most influential persons in Canadian business. I am not a career politician. I've seen how the political establishment has coddled the corporate sector. I'm determined to bring to an end that cozy relationship. The transformational agenda we need will be fiercely opposed by big business, and as leader, I will fight to overcome that opposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri. Our next candidate is Miriam Haddad.
So good evening, everyone. I am in Tiohtià:ke, unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation, also known as Montreal. My name is Miriam Haddad. I'm 32, and I am a socialist born in Syria, and I became Canadian in '97. For the past 7 years, I've been working as an immigration lawyer specializing in refugee claims from the Middle East. And I joined the party last August and ran during the last federal election, during which I was also appointed by Elizabeth to the shadow cabinet as a critic in immigration and refugees. I'm so happy to be part of today's regional town hall and talking to all of you folks in beautiful BC. Even though it's virtually, it emphasizes the importance of the Green Party to decentralize, to centralize regionally, so the local members feel empowered. And this is the way we'll be able to elect Green MPs from coast to coast to coast. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Our next candidate is Anami Paul.
Thank you so much. I'm coming to you from the territories of the Mississauga, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. And it's a real pleasure to be with you again. I'm a lawyer, an international affairs professional, a former candidate in the 2019 elections, a former international affairs critic for the party. And I joined the Green Party because I believed, and I continue to believe, that the Green Party offers the most compelling solutions for the challenges that we face. The challenges we face are going to require a global perspective. They're going to require innovative ideas. And the Green Party is really well positioned to be the person leading us through this next phase. We're going to do that through diversity, democracy, and daring. We need to diversify the party, and then we just need to be ourselves. And that is democratic champions and being daring. I look very much forward to speaking with you all about that tonight.
Thank you so much, Anami. And our final candidate that we'll hear from in our opening comments is Glenn Murray.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. I was born and raised in Montreal, but have lived in Ontario and in Western Canada, Calgary and Winnipeg. I bootstrapped myself without any party support to get elected to City Council as an activist on the front lines of the AIDS epidemic and founding member of a number of the original gay and lesbian transgender human rights initiatives. I served as a cabinet minister, built with some colleagues the largest and most successful carbon pricing GHG reduction strategy with California, Quebec, and Ontario. But I've also been an activist. I ran and built Rainbow Railroad, which gave gays, lesbians, and transgender people out of countries where they're being killed, and worked in Winnipeg to build a community health center, 9 Circles, which is one of the largest Indigenous community health centers in Canada right now. I bring an extraordinary amount of political and organizational experience and want us to see a major electoral breakthrough. Thank you.
Glenn. Thank you so much. So that brings us to the end of our opening comments, and I appreciate your ability to stick within the 1 minute. We are going to go into our next section, which Paul and I have selected from the 160 questions. We took them and themed them, and so from there we are trying to represent the questions that were submitted online, and we do thank people for sending those questions in ahead of time. So you will have, each candidate will get to respond to each question, and you will have 1 minute when you respond to that question. And we are going in, we're going to take turns on who goes first, so we'll change the order. And as Paul said, you have 3 rebuttals between this round of 4 questions and the rapid fire section where you have 30 seconds to respond to questions. So use them strategically. Okay.
Just so you know that because sometimes clicking your mic on with Zoom, it's hard to get people started. I am hitting the start button on the first word I hear so that you get your full time from the first moment your mouth utters a word. I'm trying to just be fair about that.
And our intent and our whole strategy with this is not to be difficult, but to actually try to get through a lot of questions to honor the people that have submitted the questions ahead of time. So, so here we go. Here's our first question for you this evening. And this is on the theme of being a one-issue party. For the first time in the 2019 federal election, climate change was a top 3 issue, and the Green Party of Canada was in double-digit polling in a competitive race for third-party status with the NDP. What will you do as leader to broaden support for the Green Party of Canada and address the one-issue party brand in order to improve future election success? So the first person that gets the privilege of answering this is Courtney. You have 1 minute. Oh, you're still on mute, Courtney.
Still on mute.
I'm sorry, my computer's been really cutting out. Would you mind repeating the question?
Oh, okay, that's no problem.
It's brutal internet.
For the first time in the 2019 federal election, climate change was a top 3 issue, and the Green Party of Canada was in double-digit polling in a competitive race for third-party status with the NDP. What will you do as leader to broaden support for the Green Party of Canada and address the one-issue party brand in order to improve future election success?
Thank you, and thanks for indulging me. We're having a webinar tomorrow on internet and how to provide better internet to rural areas with Judy, and some of our local people are trying to help us with that because it's gotten horrible over the course of the pandemic. So I believe that the Green Party is at a time of transition right at the same time as the world is transitioning. The Green Party has been the party of climate change. It can now go to becoming the party of planetary health. I believe that a focus on planetary health will meet Canadians where they are right now. I work in the emergency department here in Yellowknife. People are scared, they're vulnerable, and they want a safe and healthy future. They want to see their income spoken about. That's a determinant of health. We can talk about universal basic income. They want to know that their climate, the stability underneath, will be healthy. And CAPE actually put out a long report with 25 recommendations to show how we can do that. So focus on a well-being economy with everything coming out from that, I believe will resonate incredibly with Canadians and bring us a tremendous new level of support.
Thank you, Courtney. And I should probably just add, and I'm not sure if Paul did, but to indicate that you would like to rebut, you just raise your hand. It's as simple as that. So, and we'll track that. So my apologies for not mentioning that sooner. Thank you. David, what would you do to broaden support?
Thank you. I've heard this accusation on the doorstep that we're a one-issue party, and it's puzzling because we had a 92-page platform in our last campaign, and it was the best platform out there. But I do think we need to have message discipline around the fact that we are facing a climate emergency, we're facing mass species extinction, and then what we need to do is link it to these other issues, connect the dots for people in a way that's clear and understandable. And I think Courtney's right. I think we need to tie this into the pandemic, global health, and how the Greens have a really strong plan to move out of the pandemic, to make sure that we're safe, and that we are going to build a strong new economy. I think we need to run on the biggest job creation program in Canadian history, the building of an east-west electrical grid powered by renewable energy. If we can inspire people, if we can connect in clear, simple terms, we can win many more seats in the next election.
Thank you, David. Andrew, your response.
Well, I've been a 4-time Green Party candidate, and I know I've heard this a lot. And what I do is I get out in the community, and this goes to one of my main platform points, is to strengthen our EDAs. Make sure they have the resources and the tools that they can get their messages out in the community. I've been a member of many Green Party EDAs for many years, and I know that when we get out in the community, we can share this message. So what do I mean by that? I would often go talk to high schools, grade 10 civics classes, and I've done this for about 4 or 5 years. And I would talk to them about how the Green Party has a full platform, one that addresses every area of life, not just focusing on one issue. So we need to strengthen our EDAs, have our nominees nominated, or candidates nominated much earlier in the process, to start getting out in the community and start spreading this word, and get out to community events whenever possible, marching in parades, going to fall fairs, going to religious and other groups, and talk to them about the Green Party. Talk to them about how we have issues that relate to them.
Andrew, thank you so much. Judy, what would be your solution for the One Issue Party brand in improving election success?
One thing we have to understand is that people are more driven by fear. So if we find out what they're afraid of, we can couch our policies in terms that alleviate their fear. So if they're afraid of losing their job, then we need to show them that we have a just transition for workers in oil and gas. If they're afraid that they can't feed their children or they don't have daycare, then we need to talk to them about guaranteed livable income, or we need to talk about affordable childcare, which are all Green Party policies. We really need to be listening on the doorstep to truly understand what the issues are that are affecting each and every one of our constituents, and show them that we have solid solutions, upstream thinking, not just band-aids, but true solutions to the issues that they are dealing with every day in their life. And we have to earn that trust. You know, we have to show them we do politics differently and that we are a solutions-based party.
Thank you so much, Judy. Dimitri.
There's a perception not only that we're a one-issue party, but also, I don't agree with it, but that we are also a party that is not sympathetic to the rights of working Canadians to labor. And that's why I have rolled out a platform that speaks to the needs and ambitions and desires of millions upon millions of working Canadians. It calls for a mandatory worker representation on the boards of public companies. It calls for a maximum 10-to-1 spread between executive compensation and worker compensation. It calls for prioritizing the claims of workers in corporate insolvencies. And the platform speaks it resonates so much with working Canadians that within the last few days, Sid Ryan, the former president of the Ontario Federation of Labor, publicly endorsed this as going well beyond anything that any mainstream political party has put forward to defend the rights of workers. I think if we can appeal to working Canadians and get through to them that we actually are on their side and not on the side of big business, then we will be able to expand this party rapidly and dispel very quickly the notion of being a one-issue party.
Thank you, Dimitri. Miriam. Oh, I think you just muted yourself. There you go.
So it comes down to being clear about what we stand for. Last election, people did not know who we were. Our message are often too complicated, and the slogan from the last campaign just confused people. Also, personally, the idea that the environment is a single issue at all is a problem. It is a healthcare issue, it's an economic issue, it's a colonial issue. We need to be clear that fighting climate change will improve the economy, create dignified, sustainable jobs, and fighting the climate change takes fighting inequality, making sure that folks have access to high-speed, cheap internet, making sure that children are not hungry at school, and that everyone has access to adequate housing. Climate change is the biggest social issue of our time. It is also the biggest economic issue of our time. We need to completely overhaul our economy so that we stop exponential growth, so that my generation actually has a chance, because the status quo is just, it means extinction.
Thank you so much. Anami.
I just want to remind people to shut off your mics if you're not up, just because we're getting some other noise in there. Thanks. Anami, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And, you know, I believe that the Green Party has perhaps the best opportunity that it has ever had and may have for perhaps a generation to really make that breakthrough. Exactly because the social policies that we have been talking about for many, many years are resonating. They're the things that have made the difference during the pandemic. We have new interest in things like our guaranteed livable income, universal pharmacare, universal post-secondary education. And so Canadians, when we're able to come up from from the pandemic, will really be looking at us with fresh eyes. And so what we can't do is stand in our own way. And so if we want to broaden our support, then we're going to have to broaden our party. And that means diversifying our party and really demonstrating through our actions that we understand that there is no climate justice without social justice, and that we're intent on reflecting the true diversity of our country.
Thank you, Anami. Glenn.
Thanks very much. First of all, I think we need to massively invest in capacity building in every single EDA. We should be supporting and funding short-term and long-term development plans. We also have to be focused. We have, the numbers I've looked at, we have about 50 seats that I think that we are very close to winning. And if we focus on those, and that doesn't have to be a written in stone number, but a highly disciplined, highly focused campaign. We nominate candidates in those seats right away. We give them the year or two advantage to become the shadow member of parliament in that riding. So that by the time the next election comes, we have something in that ballpark number of seats as close to the win column as you possibly can get. We also need much more discipline in our message, and we need to do a lot more coalition building. And you know, 1 in 3 Canadians right now actively thinks about voting Green. Those are the people we should be targeting.
Thank you
very much.
Okay, and Amita will be our final responder for this question.
Thank you. I think what we saw in the last election was in a way a success. Everybody adopted the idea of that issue of climate change, but they didn't do it very well, not that people can tell. But now it's not so special. So we need to grow the movement by speaking to and including every single person in a personal way. But let's talk about that issue for a second, because it's not just truly an issue. It's the foundation of a philosophy and the vision of a way of life. It comes back to our core values, ecological wisdom, sustainability, and that embracing of everybody getting equal access to life. The trick to this, I believe, is all in communication, and it's something that I have experience with translating science to a general population and incorporating the immediate concerns and struggles of everyone, speaking with heart and compassion to people's daily lives, and that we show that we will bring people to government and truly be representative and embrace also the value of participatory democracy and the true meaning of representative democracy. Thank you.
Thanks, Amita. Okay, I think, Paul, you're the second question.
Yep, I can keep on timing too if you like. You
No,
you've got your colored cards, you're all set to go.
I've got mine ready to go.
I rated my daughter's art supplies. She's moved out, doesn't know that I'm into them. So this next question is about foreign policy. What is your vision and focus for Canada's foreign policy? And we're going to start with David this time. Your mic's muted. There you go.
Thank you, Paul. My vision for our foreign policy is that Canada becomes a leader again internationally, especially on global climate action. We're facing a global problem and we need Canada to be a global leader. And as the 4th largest producer of fossil fuels in the world, Canada should be leading the way on the transition off fossil fuels. Let's show the rest of the world how we can do it. Let's build this east-west electrical grid powered by renewables. Let's make sure we leave no one behind as we do it. Let's make sure that we bring in a guaranteed livable income to end poverty in Canada, and that we provide free tuition for people so they can become part of the economy of the future. This would be a nation-building enterprise, the largest job creation program in Canadian history, which will lead us out of the pandemic. I believe that we can inspire Canadians on this and inspire the world. And if we make that the focus of our international policy, our foreign aid, we can help beat this global climate emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Andrew.
I would like to see more increase in funding so we can have strong international relations and more increase in funding for our service people, especially when it comes to peacekeeping. We used to be the leaders in peacekeeping at one point in time, but we've gotten so far behind in that area. And we need to take a strong stance against countries who abuse human rights. That is extremely important. And that means requiring we live up to some certain international obligations, including contributing more to the International Criminal Court. I also think that, David Mirner is right, that we can set an example by tackling the climate change. I mean, one of the examples I was given that was great was that we have 2%, we contribute to about 2% of the population's climate change pollution. And that may not sound like much, but in World War II, we had 2% of the Allies, and we made a difference there as well. So those are the two things we need to do. We have to have strong international relations so we can help improve human rights around the world.
Thank you, Andrew. And Judy, you're up.
Thank you. Andrew's right. Our Canadian military did identify best. I think Canadians identify best as peacekeepers. We need to be enhancing that role and actually supporting what we're asking our service members to do, which is deploy to areas that are dealing with climate crisis and events of extreme weather. We need to be really consistent on our international policies based on basic human rights. I have a real problem that we do friends and family discount to certain regimes that have abhorrent records on human rights, and yet they are some of our top trading partners. We need to support people in war-torn areas, the people on the ground, not the governments, with water, food, shelter, medical assistance. And we need to prepare for an influx of climate migrants so that we do our part in the world in supplying a safe home and being able to integrate them into our population in a measured manner. Thank you.
Judy. Dimitri, you're next.
I think that we need to start acting like a truly sovereign nation and not like an appendage of the United States government. And to give but one example, well, broadly, let me say, first of all, that you can understand Canadian foreign policy in this way. If a human rights violator is deemed by the US government to be an ally, Canada gives it a free pass. If it is deemed by the United States government to be an official enemy of the US, Canada will hold it accountable. So an example of this is Venezuela. We are in the Lima Group. We're reporting to be concerned about the human rights of the Venezuelan people. Who's in the Lima Group with us? Honduras, a heinous human rights violator. Colombia, a heinous human rights violator. Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil, a heinous human rights violator. The Lima Group, just by its constitution, its composition, shows very clearly that this isn't about human rights at all. And we as Canadians should say, we're not going to participate in this fiasco just because the US government wants to overthrow the Venezuelan government, whatever its flaws may be. We are going to take a principled stand. We're going to stand with the Venezuelan people and peoples around the world and not do the bidding of the United States government.
Thank you, Dimitri. Miriam.
Foreign policy must be informed by social and environmental justice, including international grassroots organizations, and must be focused on peacekeeping and on centering the social and economic well-being of all people affected by Canadian foreign policy. Canada must take a strong stance in support of universal human rights and international law by placing economic and political sanctions on any state in violation of human rights, including Israel, Saudi Arabia, and China. Canadian foreign policy should be independent from political interest of Washington, and Canada must cease all financial and diplomatic support of arms exporters. It must focus on demilitarization. It must cut ties with domestic and international mining interests and move towards a green foreign policy based on environmental justice rather than mining. And also, we must also take responsibility for our role in climate crises. We are one of the world's highest emitters as well as exporters of greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you, Miriam. Anami.
Thank you very much. And I was working overseas in international affairs when I saw Canada lose its way. I was working in our mission to the EU and at the International Criminal Court. And it happened very quickly, and these reputations are very hard to recover once they're lost. But it is possible. And one of the ways that it's possible is by really doing what we've done best, which is identify some of the vacuums in international relations and fill that with knowledge. In terms of the climate emergency, we can absolutely be a leader first by setting strong targets here at home, but then also by helping us to prepare for the impact of the climate emergency globally. We also can be leaders by making sure that we have just trade agreements, and by demonstrating that it is possible to have a strong and robust economy without doing it on the backs of people abroad, and ensuring that if we do have partnerships, they're with people who respect human rights, labor rights in the way that we do.
Thank you, Anami. And now, Dimitri, you raised a hand. Do you want to do a rebuttal right now, or you want to listen to the other two candidates?
I'm happy to wait until the others have spoken.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Glenn.
So I think we have to be extraordinarily laser focused. We are a country who has limited impacts on foreign policy. And I think there's two critical priority areas. One of them is the mass displacement of people. 23% of Australia's forests burned to the ground. Syria, 8.6 million refugees, and major collapse of food in the Fertile Crescent. We are coming into sub-Saharan Africa is going to see extended periods of time at near or above 50 degrees Celsius, and many of the fastest growing populated parts of the world are not going to be able to sustain anywhere near the populations that they currently do. Population relocation is going to be the biggest issue in this century, and Canada is one of the few countries that has the capacity to engage in that life and death issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Namita.
Thank you. I think this comes down to our values as well, and wanting good for everyone. And here, I believe it's important that we balance immediate advocacy and impact and taking a stand because we can, and encouraging also a robust plan for governance, and understanding our leverage and our ability to lead globally where and when we have it. But our focus should definitely be on human rights, but while keeping in mind that we should separate regimes from people and working together where we can, also on global crises like the climate crisis. Treating everyone with compassion, working towards undoing systemic violence and oppression, as well as current violence and oppression. Also is really important to make sure that we do not sow division in anything that we advocate for. At home, working on economic self-sufficiency so we have the power is really important, as well as increasing refugee resettlement and opening up our immigration policy while focusing on equity. I say my family is from Hong Kong, so this is really personal to me recently with human rights. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Courtney.
Thank you. I've spent a lot of the last 5 years working in international global health policy with the Lancet Countdown on Health and Climate Change, the World Health Organization, Civil Society Working Group, and also other Global Climate and Health Alliance bodies. And what I've really seen is the importance of those relationships and the bodies at the international level that help us to organize ourselves. I think that the coronavirus crisis has shown us without a shadow of a doubt how important UN-based institutions like the World Health Organization are. And as Glenn said, we are facing a century of increasing crises. We need to strengthen our contributions, financial, political support for institutions like the WHO. And at the same time, we need to make sure that we do lead where we can. I think the Powering Past Coal Alliance is a great example of how we created concrete change at home, partnered with another country, the UK, and created a cadre of nations that is now leading the way. Nations follow leadership too. We can be one of those leaders.
Thank you, Courtney. And so we have one rebuttal from Dimitri. You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Andrew, you spoke eloquently of the need to hold human rights violators accountable. Independent Jewish Voices and Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East have put out a request for people in politics to oppose Israel's illegal annexation of West Bank territory. All 3 members of our caucus have signed that. 6 of the 9 candidates have signed that, including me. I don't believe you've signed it. And I would like to ask you this evening, if you, in light of your commitment to human rights, will you sign the pledge to oppose Israel's illegal annexation of West Bank territory? Will all the candidates who have not done that do so?
Thank you, Dimitri. So you've mentioned Andrew directly, and I'm going to give Andrew 15 seconds to respond.
Sorry, did you say I'm allowed to respond? I didn't hear that, sorry.
You get 15 seconds to respond if another candidate calls you out, and you get a short response.
One of the reasons why I haven't been focusing on that is honestly before more time more than anything else. But let's be honest, I am for human rights. I don't want to see, I support the Green Party's platform about what they stand for Palestine. I don't want to see the annexation of any Palestinian lands. You can put that clear. But that just goes beyond Palestine and Israel. We should also focus on Syria. We should also focus on China
Thanks, Andrew.
And in Hong Kong.
Okay. That's it. You got a quick little response. Now, David's got 30 seconds to rebut. Who else has got their hand up? Okay, is we clear? Okay, David, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on an excellent point Amina made about not showing division. I think it's really important inside the Green Party that we be careful about these issues and that we unite around our common values, around human rights, around international law. Let's not divide among ourselves around issues that aren't core to us. And the global climate emergency is core to our values, and let's focus on the things that unite us.
Okay, and Anami, you had your hand up for, and then I've got Glenn and Judy and Miriam. That's correct. Go ahead, Anami.
Paul, just for clarity, with the hands are going up there, a rebut, so it's 30 seconds, right?
Yes.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay. It's to say that I don't think we have the luxury of picking and choosing the issues that we do and don't engage in. And I did want to use a couple more minutes just to say that we cannot forget the Sustainable Development Goals. I was very proud to see that in our platform. And with the time is running out on those. And we also have to be careful about regimes around the world and even our government that have been using the pandemic as cover for taking back fundamental human rights, compromising fundamental human rights. This is the time when the Green Party needs to be vigilant.
Thank you, Anami. Glenn.
Two things. I have done an incredible amount of international negotiations at COP as a minister, putting together international agreements and doing much of the foundational work for what became Canada's position at Paris, which was done mostly by Quebec, Ontario, and BC. But there are things that government doesn't do well. Gay and lesbian transgender people are killed by the hundreds right now. The only successful initiative Canada really has been Rainbow Railroad, as I said, was built out of my living room. We need to invest in social enterprise, rainbow networks for human rights. We can't just rely on government. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. We're going to move on to Judy.
Two issues. I wanted to just point out that we really have to be better on our human rights record here at home with respect to First Nations. We have 3 agreements that we've done little work on here at home. And when we do decide to respond to a certain action in one country, perhaps the annexation, we need to apply that equitably to all countries that are behaving the same situation. So Israel and Tibet come to mind. So we need to have equitable application of our policies.
Thank you, Judy. Miriam.
I'd like to mention to Andrew that it's so difficult to mention that we should economic and political sanctions should be placed on Israel, and like Israel was never mentioned by him. And well, why not Syria? Well, there are many sanctions on Syria, and people are dying of hunger. That's what's going on in that country. And also, David, don't you think nonviolence is a core value of the Greens? I don't think it's a question of dividing. It's a policy that was voted by the members. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're ready to move on to the next question. Did you want to?
Since I was mentioned, Paul, I think I get 30 seconds, or is that 15 seconds, I guess?
15 seconds, a quick response.
Just to say,
please.
oh,
okay, go ahead, David.
Okay, good. I just want to say I totally agree, Miriam. Nonviolence is a key Green Party policy, Green Party value, and we should stand for it. My last 10 years in government, I worked on international human rights in the Dispute Resolution Office at the Ministry of Attorney General, and I really stand by that. I understand it and believe it deeply. And I do believe we have to pay much more attention. Thank you.
15 seconds isn't a lot of time. Go ahead, Andrew. You get your 15
So,
seconds. Wow.
yes, Miriam, I mentioned these other countries. You can also talk about the Roma and Hungary. There's many other issues that I want to draw attention to. I volunteered with Amnesty International for over a year because this is an important issue to me. And I think that we should be focusing more on the stuff that unites us and not to divide us in this leadership campaign. So yes, those are all very important issues to me. I'm drawing all those attention to as many of those as I possibly can as well. I'm not focusing on just one area. I'm focusing on all areas.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So obviously everybody's got a lot of great things to say, and for those of you that are watching, you can find out more about all of these candidates on the greenparty.ca leadership contest, and that'll take you to all of their individual websites, and you can dig into these issues a lot more. So the next question goes to Jonina.
Okay, thank you. So this is an issue that is near and dear to many people here. In British Columbia, we have declared 2 public health emergencies, the COVID-19 global pandemic and the opioid poisoning and overdose crisis. As leader of the Green Party of Canada, what specific federal actions would you advocate for to address the opioid poisoning and overdose crisis in British Columbia and across Canada? Does anyone need that repeated?
No, we're going to start with Andrew.
Yeah. Okay, Andrew.
So my platform is focusing on the policies of the Green Party and getting us elected to get these parties to turn into legislation. I think we have great policies on addressing the opioid crisis. So I can spend the next 2 minutes or so talking about, how we should address the opioid crisis in the cities, how we should address the opioid crisis on Indigenous communities, which, by the way, that was the pandemic before the COVID crisis. I can spend this all time talking about that, but the reality is we need to get elected, and that's what I'm focusing on. Our policies are great. Guaranteed livable income is a great policy that would have helped us through the COVID-19 crisis, how we had it in place. We wouldn't have drawn the deficit that we wouldn't have created much of the deficit as we did if we'd had the system in place to begin with. So that's what I'm focusing on, is making sure that we get elected. Our policies are great. Our policies are passed by our members, but we have to appeal to the most broad-based voters that we possibly can so we can get elected and start turning these policies into legislation.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, Judy, your turn.
Okay, thank you. Andrew's right. We have great policies on this. Safe injection sites, decriminalizing opioid possession, where that allows us to redirect what would have been a lot of money in incarceration to a little bit less money to be able to actually provide the health care that addicts require and help get them through that crisis. We kind of have a convergence of the 2 crises right now because COVID-19 is exacerbating the opioid crisis because of the closing down of the safe injection sites. And addiction itself, there's a huge correlation between isolation from community and support that goes into making addiction a lot more serious. And because of the physical distancing, it's been very difficult for people who are addicts to be able to reach out to those support systems. So we really do have to look at how the 2 crises are converging and apply our policies in a way that's going to solve both that convergence and the health of our citizens. Thank you.
Right. Dimitri.
Both BC and Alberta have been dealing with an opioid crisis that is even deadlier than COVID-19. And I think in order to deal effectively with this crisis, we have to get to the root cause of addiction. I had the opportunity during this campaign to interview Gabor Mate, a world-renowned addiction expert, and he explained that our medical system, including our medical schools, haven't even begun to grapple with the root cause of addiction, and that is trauma. And if we want to ultimately solve that form of addiction and other forms of addiction in our society, we have to address meaningfully and assertively the social injustices and the traumas resulting from them in our society, such as poverty, such as domestic abuse, such as homelessness. These are the things that ultimately are causing the traumas that result in persons resorting to substances like opioids for ways to cope with their trauma. So I think we really have to have a fundamental rethinking about the nature of addiction in our society before we can solve this extraordinarily deadly crisis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri. Miriam.
So I do agree. I agree with Dimitri. We need to address the causes of drug use, and we need to decriminalize drug use. We need to create safe injecting sites and treat it as a mental health issue. So I do agree with I completely agree with the Green Party of Canada's policy on this. It needs to be treated as a health issues and not a criminal issue. And we need to adopt the Portuguese model, which was hugely successful, and cut the pickup rate of and saved lives. We also need to put measures to make recreational drug use less deadly. Every year we have avoidable deaths in music festivals. Hopefully there will be in the future music festivals, and people need to have access to pill testing kits, free water in nightclubs and dark rooms, so that people can calm down also. Thank you.
Thank you. Glenn.
Yeah, I think it's a comprehensive solution, and it has to be locally and community based. I spent 12 years working as a street outreach worker, starting at 9 o'clock at night to 3 o'clock in the morning, working with kids who were street involved. Almost 80% of them were sexually, violently abused. We have to make a commitment and fund that every child, every human being, every woman has a key to a safe place at the end of the day, free of violence. We did not do what they do in most of the rest of Canada, Mayor. We built 6,000 affordable housing units in Winnipeg, which was a Canadian record, all built by people in the community through a cooperative development corporation based on plans. So the community would define this neighborhood and define it. Included in that was community health. And the other thing we have to do is we have to end incarceration. We need to dramatically shift money from incarceration to mental health and community health supports. And the justice system should be assigning people to mental health supports and community supports in the context of being able to live in a family in a comfortable situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn. Amita.
Thank you. I think there is going to be a lot of agreement here because we tend to agree with Green Party policy on this. I also want to treat the whole situation with compassion and as a health crisis and not a criminal one. And a really important piece of that is understanding how much societal blame is currently placed on people who are drug users, and as well as the stigma of mental health in general. And I speak to this from a slightly different place because of my own trauma. And I have to say that the road to drug addiction and dying on the street is one that I've seen myself close to. And it's only by the privileges of my life that I've avoided going down that road. So it's incredibly important, and it's therefore so important that we treat every individual as somebody who isn't doing this by some choice, but is forced to by society. And therefore decriminalizing all drugs, following the Portugal model, expanding health supports, addressing the trauma crisis, defunding the police towards many forms of social support are all the things that we have to do, while remembering that every person is there.
Thank you so much. Courtney.
Thank you, and I agree with a lot of what everybody has said. Certainly some of this does rest in educating healthcare providers themselves. We have been an oxy-free ED here in Illinois for a long time in recognition of the fact that oxycodone really led to a lot of on-ramps for addiction, and a locum came through the other day who prescribed some. So I can see that this is still not across the board practice. Safe injection sites are important. The importance also of considering treatment that includes opioids as part of the treatment program, so that we are providing opioids that we know are safe, that don't contain contaminants. And of course, a comprehensive approach to decrease housing, provide income, and treat mental health. I've worked in BC, Ontario, Quebec, Nunavut, and the NWT, and I interact with Alberta all the time. Nowhere have I ever worked in Canada that has an adequate approach to mental health.
Thank you. David.
Thank you, Jonina. Dr. Bonnie Henry says almost every day in her press conferences, be kind, be calm, and be safe. And what many British Columbians don't remember and Canadians don't know is that she's also written a definitive report on how to address the tragedy that we're facing with our opioid crisis here in BC. And it's a national solution too. We need to stop the war on drugs. We need to follow, as everybody else has said, the model in Portugal and Switzerland and the Netherlands. We know what the answers are, and what it takes is political will. More people are dying here in British Columbia than, from drug overdoses than from the opioid crisis. It's urgent. And our premier here, in the NDP Premier John Horgan, is pointing the finger at the federal government. There's lots the provincial government can do through policies with the Ministry of Attorney General, its prosecution policies, and through policing policies at the Ministry of Solicitor General. I've done this work for 10 years. It can be done. The federal government has to amend the criminal code, and it has to legalize all drugs and put them in the hands of health practitioners and take them out of the hands of the gang members.
Thank you, David. Anami, I think have you gone on this one? You haven't. Okay, I somehow I skipped over, so I'm so sorry. Your turn.
Okay, no problem. I ran in the last election in what is described as the ground zero for the opioid crisis, Toronto Centre. We have 5 out of the 7 safe injection sites in Toronto. And so, yes, this is a very urgent issue. And I think we need to break this down into parts. The first one, there's a lot of consensus amongst Greens. We need to decriminalize the drug supply so that there is a safe supply, because people are dying of poisonings and not overdoses. We also need to do all the things that were said, and just keep in mind that we've demonstrated throughout this pandemic that jurisdiction can be put aside when lives are at stake. And so I want to see the same level of cooperation between provincial and federal governments in addressing the opioid crisis as we've seen during the pandemic. And we also have to make sure that the solutions are comprehensive, because we've seen a spike in deaths during the pandemic because there's guaranteed livable income checks, but not mental health services. So let's make sure that we have a comprehensive solution that we're offering.
Thank you so much. And that brings us to the end of our 3rd question, and I'm going to turn it over to Paul for our 4th question.
And guess what? I'm going to throw us all off on the order that we've written down here, because I'm going to just skip to the rapid response ones, which are all 30-second questions, because we're almost at the top of the hour and we have 30 minutes left. So this first question is, what are your views on vote whipping and imposing caucus solidarity on contentious issues? And we're going to start with Judy.
One of the things that attracted me to the Green Party was the ability to represent my constituents. As long as we are in solidarity with the core Green principles and core policy platforms, that we have the opportunity to really speak to what is important for our members. We were accused of being an undisciplined rabble because we don't have the traditional way of dealing with things in Parliament, but I think that we have the skills for consensus that allows us to be informed in those choices.
Thank you. And Dimitri.
In the parliamentary spirit, I'm going to be brief, Paul. The things that bind us as Greens are the 6 core values. As long as we take positions that are consistent with those core values, I think diversity of opinion is entirely acceptable, but we should not depart from those core values under any circumstances.
Okay. Miriam.
I love that we don't have to whip votes, and but we got to stay true to our values, but and really vet our candidates. Like, we can't have a repeat of what happened during the last election. So we need to be clear on what we stand for. And there's so much confusion about who we are that sometimes we attract racist, homophobic, transphobic, and sexist people who do not belong with the Green Party of Canada. So we are the most progressive party, and we need to be proud of that. So I recognize that in different provinces there's different realities. However, we all have the same values, and
Thank you, Miriam. And Anami.
Yes, as long as there's respect for the core values, then I believe the first loyalty of members of Parliament are to their constituents. But you know, the devil's in the details, and so saying that we all have to respect the core values has to have content. And you know, that can be messy, that can be difficult, and it's going to be an ongoing process and discussion between members. That's one of the things that a leader can do, facilitate that kind of discussion, so that we all know what we're talking about when we say that we're respecting the core values But I love, as we all do, that I can feel that my loyalty to my constituents comes first.
Thanks, Anami. And Glenn. Oh, you muted yourself, Glenn.
Oh, thanks, Paul. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think you have to have two stacks of issues. We have to have we have a lot of policies. We're fairly weak on the plans on how we'd implement them and what they would look like. So I think we have to take those dozen or so issues that are absolutely concretely important to us, define how we're going to implement them, and on that, we have to vote as a solid block. On other issues, I think Greens, as long as they're following principles, should do that. But I think we are often vulnerable because we don't define carefully what we will do collectively when we get elected.
Thank you, Glenn. And Amita.
Thank you. I think it's fundamentally important that MPs must be able to fully represent the people of their riding, as that is the primary part of a Green mandate. But we also need to be completely clear and agree on our core values. And about some of the problems that may come up, it is our duty to represent people, not our own opinions. And if anyone is in any way discriminatory, going against the code of conduct, they have to be gone immediately. I think it'd also be good to have a distributed governance system so that we can make decisions quickly and have clear responsibilities and get to a place where we can form government.
Thanks, Amita. And Courtney.
Well, I'm going to be in the difficult position of agreeing with everybody. And essentially, this was the major factor that solidified for me that this was really the only political party that I would feel comfortable joining. I think it's really important to be able to vote in accordance with the Green values, which I agree with, and in support of constituents. I've been on many boards, and I've been in the difficult position of having to vote and be in accordance with board solidarity on issues where I felt we were actually going against the core values of the organization and the path we were taking. So I think that this is a key part of Green Party policy, and I support it wholeheartedly.
Thanks, Courtney. David.
Thank you. I too agree with everything that's been said. I think it's critical for us to be able to stick to our conscience, listen to our constituents, and respect the freedom of our members of parliament. I also, though, think it's really critical that during election time, we recognize that we need to have a consistent, strong, cohesive message. And we need to really be careful how we screen our candidates. We are a pro-choice party. Everybody needs to know that. We follow science on vaccination. Everybody needs to know that. We need discipline and cohesion during elections, and then diversity between elections.
Thank you, David. And Andrew.
I believe in having free votes. It can be difficult at times, but that's what being a grassroots party is all about, is making sure that we communicate with each other, talk to each other, and work things out so we can get our policies passed. And one of the ways we've talked about, making sure we get the right candidates. First off, Green Party candidates are we attract good candidates, but an additional step that we should have is an additional vetting process at the constituency level. So riding associations can actually help vet candidates and help us say in the candidates that they nominate.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so nobody used a rebuttal card on that one. I'm going to pass it over to Jonina.
Oh, I think, Dimitri, are you using your rebuttal card?
Yeah, although it's not really a rebuttal, but I did want to add something on this question, if I may. Do I have 15 seconds?
You got 30 seconds for a rebuttal card.
30 seconds, all right.
And you used your second rebuttal card.
So I agree with Anami that the devil is in the details. And David started to put some, content to those details. Talked about abortion and abortion rights. I'd like to add one thought about this because it's something that's caused controversy in our party in the past. We are committed to nonviolence. I think we should be a champion of a gun-free society. There's really no place in our party, in my respectful opinion, for gun advocacy. And I hope that in the future we can be stronger on that point.
Okay, thank you, Dimitri. And now Jonina's going to ask the next question and I'll keep time.
Okay, so again, 30 seconds to respond. This one is on climate action. Oh, sorry. I didn't see that. Are you? My apologies. So 30 seconds.
No problem. Thank you. I just wanted to talk about nonviolence for a second and about appreciating different views that may come up about guns, because I think that we have to have a conversation of what nonviolence actually means. But I would actually like to take that a step further and hope that we can get to a point of being a party that actually talks about anti-violence and what it truly means to address violence in all its forms, remove it from everything in our society, and not be stepping on anyone's rights, and making sure that in those conversations we get to a place of agreement. But it is by making sure that everyone's understanding that idea of nonviolence. Thank you.
Okay. Are we actually moving on this time? Okay, good to go.
Okay. So this one is, how would you as leader influence the government to take serious action on the climate crisis? And I don't actually have an order of people in my link. So I'm going to start with
Dimitri's next.
Okay, Dimitri.
You got to go back to the last question. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay, Dimitri.
Well, although our three members of parliament are doing an extraordinary job, we nonetheless have difficulty leveraging our position in parliament into concrete action by the government because of the distribution of seats. And so I think this really raises an interesting question about what is a political party. I've heard a lot of discussion in this leadership campaign about the distinction between activism and professional politics. I personally think you can meld those two things together. And when it comes to the climate crisis, one thing that we can do, despite being limited to having 3 seats, is be activists, get in the streets, and support people on the ground who are fighting to address the climate emergency.
Thank you so much. Next is Miriam.
So the latest Trudeau scandal has actually given parties like the Green Party of Canada, the NDP, and the Bloc a huge amount of power to bring in change. We could leverage the situation to push Trudeau to take meaningful action on climate. I'm just suggesting this. We also need to win more seats. And I mean, while we have already changed many of the other parties' platform, change has not happened quickly enough. And we need to collaborate with other parties. There is more opportunity than we think to put pressure on other parties to adapt their platforms. And
thank you so much. Anami.
Well, as frustrating as it can be sometimes for Greens, there's definitely been a place for quiet diplomacy in terms of getting our policies into action. It certainly hasn't been enough. And political parties, our job is proposition, but we always have to make sure we're supplementing that with opposition wherever necessary. And that's where we build alliances with people in civil society who can really supplement what we're trying to do when we're not getting the kind of cooperation that we should have.
Thank you so much. Glenn.
Yeah, so this is a point where we have a bit of disagreement. I think we're missing some of the fundamental components. We do not have a carbon budget. We do not have a legislated cap. We don't have a cap decline rate, which some provinces have, which was around 4 to 5%. To meet anywhere near green goals, we need to be at an 8 to 10% decline rate. Fee and dividend is great, I support it, but it doesn't come anywhere near. And where I disagree is many industries from clean tech and labor like blue-green are doing amazing work. We should be working directly with labor and industry. And sorry?
Glenn.
That's it.
Would you like to rebut now, or would you like to, yes? Okay, you have 30 seconds.
No, it's okay. I'll just close it off there. That's fine. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. Sorry, we're trying to be really fair about the time. Miriam, you'd like to rebut now?
At the end.
At the end?
Okay. At the end. Okay.
That's fine. So next is Amita.
Thank you. I think this starts with the nonpartisan lens that, the caucus has already shown works so well to actually urge the government to do things, and change happens that way, but also acknowledging the interconnectedness of climate in absolutely everything, and also the immediacy of this problem. That's personal to me, and I want to make sure the entire country is ready. Therefore, we have to incorporate into everything and suggest solutions that happen to work for the government and what people are looking for, but also solve the climate crisis so that they get adopted. Thanks.
Thanks. Courtney.
Thank you. So I've spent the last few years writing reports at the intersection of climate change and health, in many cases co-branded by the Canadian Medical Association, Canadian Nursing Association, Canadian Public Health Association, and others, which means I briefed a lot of cabinet ministers. Nobody knows that climate change is a health issue. Once they know, across the board, there's evidence to suggest there's an entirely new level of motivation, and that's what I've seen personally. So we need to make that connection. We also need to make it clear to people we are committed to at least 2 degrees Celsius of further warming by mid-century. Nobody understands that either. We know that adaptation can lead the way to mitigation.
Thank you. I know it's tight. All right, David, you're next.
Thank you. We need to win seats. And to win seats, we need a clear, compelling, inspiring message, and we need organization on the ground in 338 ridings and our key target ridings as well. We also are very well placed to build a movement of movements, not just with climate extinction and the Friday climate strikers, but also with Black Lives Matter, with Suet and Strong, Idle No More. Let's build a movement of movement together, and then we'll have seats and we can collaborate with the other parties then. Cooperation is critical, but first we have to win seats.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Andrew.
The best way that we can have change for the climate in our government is to form government. It's the same thing with electoral reform. Every other party promises it and never delivers. We're the only party that's going to have the integrity to really act on the climate, but we have to get elected. And that means having a leader that can get us elected across Canada to form government in time, because we have these great policies. But as a 4-time Green Party candidate, I know what it's like to be told you're the best candidate and not win, and we need a leader that will change that.
Thank you, Andrew. And lastly, Judy, and then we have a rebuttal from Miriam.
Great.
Oh, and more.
I'm too already.
Okay.
I'm rebutting myself.
Okay, well, I'm going to need those hands again in a second, but let's go with Judy first.
Okay, one of the things is we really need to update our information, because I think our data from the last election needs to be updated. There is permafrost and temperatures and ice melting far faster. We have far more feedback loops happening faster than we anticipated. That the science is rapidly changing. We absolutely need more MPs. We need proportional representation. We need to build networks across parties, a climate cabinet, and we need to be speaking about things in terms of the cost of not doing it now.
Thanks, Judy. Okay, so I have Miriam first, and then other hands are probably going to go up. Go ahead, Miriam. You have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Okay, so yeah, it's a rebuttal, but I just wanted to continue because it's super dear to me, and we need to mobilize at the end. And winning the youth vote must be the priority of the party. The other parties will adapt their policies to try to win this demographic. The young people of this country are now the biggest voting bloc, and they just cannot be ignored. And saying that the young people don't vote during election is not true. We have seen an increase over the past 2 elections, and the Zoomers are turning out on even higher rates. It is a global trend, and I think that young people have.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We are
Okay.
realizing.
No, time is up. I'm sorry, Miriam. Okay, Anami, did you have your hand up? And then Glenn.
I did, and it was just to say that perhaps I'm too literal, but I was answering the question, which is, what can we do with this government to pressure them to immediate action? And so what I'm saying is that for this government, we do what we can in terms of collaboration, cooperation, which is the green way, and might involve, again, some behind the scenes work. And then where we can't get it from them, then we mobilize, we build alliances, we take to the streets, we pressure them in the ways that we know how. And of course, then finally, we run and we win.
Thank you, Anthony. I have Glenn and then Andrew.
So I'm interested in some of this debate because corporations and industry associations are, many of them, committed to massive reductions down to carbon neutrality long before 2050. Blue-green, people like Jerry Dias and Tim Gray, who have been a source of some criticism, have been transformational leaders in achieving those reductions. And what part of the narrative coming out of this party right now is that we don't accept that industry and labor are full partners. And we're creating a lot of friction there. And I just don't think that's realistic. And I think we need to have a good, healthy debate about that.
Thanks, Glenn. Andrew, you're next. And did anyone else have a hand up? Okay, David after Andrew, and then Courtney. Okay, go ahead, Andrew.
I'm one of the Green Party leadership contestants that favor the fee and dividend program. Not only because many economists think that that's the best way to combat climate change, not only because it's working in British Columbia, but also because our members wanted it. That's the form of tax that our members wanted. And that's 3 great reasons why I support it.
Thank you. David, you're next, and then Courtney.
Thank you. I was Director of Parliamentary Affairs at the Department of Justice for 3 years, and I just want to give a shout out to Elizabeth May, who's been elected as Parliamentarian of the Year for so many years. And one of the things that she was amazing at was creating alliances in the Senate and in the House of Commons. She had relationships with senators. Remember her Free Willy legislation, which got through last year? It was because she had a relationship with somebody in the Senate. I believe it was a Conservative senator. They started the legislation there. It went through the House of Commons. Knowledge of parliamentary procedure, working with others in a collaborative way, those are key skills for a leader, and Elizabeth demonstrates those.
Thank you so much, David. Courtney.
Narrative is really important. The biggest reason I decided to run for this leadership is because we are in the middle of a planetary health crisis. So the pandemic is the result of a zoonotic virus that made its leap into humans from animals. It's the biggest proof point we have ever had of the need to take the health of humans and the environment into account. It becomes the reason for us to take action on the climate crisis. That is why we need to use a planetary health frame, and that will get us where we need to go.
Great, thank you so much, Courtney. Okay, Paul, we've got
all the rebuttals.
I think we're
Howard has got her hand up.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. I just want to mention quickly, I completely, of course, understand very personally the urgency of this, and I have a huge commitment to climate action. But yes, we need to have an updated platform that is always completely accurate to current science. But I will promise you, as a mathematician and a physicist, that just tailing numbers to people will not help them understand the science. So we need to be speaking from compassion and heart and actually finding ways to communicate the science that isn't just based in numbers. Thank you.
All right.
Given the time, we might need to move to closing. What do you think, Paul?
Yep.
All right, I'll let you lead that.
Okay. Wow, I can't remember who's in what order now because we've been skipping along. So we just ended with, Judy was the last one on this one, right? Yes. So we're going to do closing statements, and we're going to start with Miriam. And you get 30 seconds to wrap up.
Thank you to everyone who made tonight's event possible. The Green Party staff are here every night, as well as Paul and Jonina for facilitating. So as Greens, people tell us that our plans are naive, too ambitious, and too expensive. And they know that we are right, but just don't want to act. My generation is facing extinction. We have a few years to act and determine our future on this planet. Governments and corporations deny how urgently we need to clean this mess up. Because if they did, they would have to accept responsibility. They say that we can't afford to act, but their terrible policies and their inaction are the only thing standing in our way. We have no other choice, but we can do one thing. We can fight for a Green New Deal. We are the solution. And if I am the next leader, I will do everything.
Oh, my apologies.
It's okay. It's okay.
It was supposed to be 60 seconds. Somebody told me 30. Something in my little head told me 30. Whoops. Do you want to take another 10 seconds, Miriam?
Sure. I just want to say that I will make sure that my generation has a future on this planet. This is why I ran, and this is why I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And Anami.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and it's wonderful to see so many Greens getting involved in the leadership race. I believe that you match a party with a time, and I believe that the Green Party is the party for this time. There is no party that is better situated to tackle not only the climate emergency, but all of the emerging challenges, global and domestic, that we have. I also believe that you match a party and a leader with a particular time as well. And I believe that I have a lot to offer to members at this time in the party's life. I can help us diversify the party, which is going to be really key to making an electoral breakthrough. I can help us navigate the global nature of the challenges that we face because of my global experience. And I can help us do it in a daring and innovative way, which is the green way, because I'm very comfortable working in that space. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to talk to you all over the next 2 months. Please join us if you're excited by our vision. And again, thank you so much for being involved in the campaign.
Thank you, Anami. And Glenn.
Fee and dividend, Andrew, I totally agree with you. But it's not sufficient, necessary enough, but not sufficient. We need a carbon pricing system that mobilizes capital. We don't have that. Industry leaders, labor leaders need, and people's jobs depend on the efficacy and the nature of an economically positive, job-affirming pricing system that deals with the complex issues of trade and training. We have to get more serious about it, and we have to have a system. And we cannot make enemies out of labor and business by making generalizations, especially when some of our governments are provincial governments are missing their targets by 200%, and very few people in the public sector are competing even close to some of the reductions that are being made by industry. We need to be much more realistic. We can't just talk about policies. We're talking about people's lives, jobs, and regional economies and people's well-beings. We have to develop more specific plans on all of these things like guaranteed livable income, carbon pricing, and transition of the economy. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And Amida, you're up next, and a quick apology to you for wrong terminology. So go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you. Thank you to, of course, our amazing moderators, Paul and Jonina, and the organizers today and everybody who came. We have an amazing opportunity right now as a party to grow. We can be the ones to unite the country towards a concrete vision and a collective dream of an ecologically wise future. Politics can be tough, but honestly, we're having a great time. We're making this campaign into what the party and the country can be, a place of belonging and hope. We are building a movement, and we invite you to join us. BC has a long history of giving Canada groundbreaking leaders. Canada's first woman prime minister was from BC, and nearly 30 years later, BC will again make history by electing Canada's first non-binary leader. So check out my website, amitakutner.ca, to connect or join. And while you're there, please consider helping me get on the ballot by nominating me or donating to the campaign. As Greens, we all have a responsibility to grow the movement, so get the word out, get your friends in. There's no better time than now. Thank you.
Thank you, Amida. And Courtney, you're up.
Thank you. So we are living at a time of tremendous vulnerability and instability. In the next 3 years, 4 years, we need to solve COVID, its economic fallout, and climate change at the same time with the same set of policy measures. I'm an emergency doctor. I manage crises for a living. I'm also one of Canada's and the world's most well-known policymakers and advocates at the intersection of climate change and health. A health frame is what will motivate people to seek a safe and healthy future. I'm already extremely well known at the national level in the environmental world as well as the health world. I bring both of those constituencies as well as kids. I've got these little kids. I'm married to a pediatrician. And I have done a lot of organizing at the national level as the president of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. I believe I bring a lot of skill sets to the table. I've created change before. I can help the party get to the next level. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Courtney. And David.
Thank you. I'd like to start by recognizing all these fantastic candidates, these leadership candidates here. If we can unite after this is all over, we're going to have one fantastic team. I especially want to say thanks to Judy, who is 4 time zones away from British Columbia. I salute you in particular, Judy. Way to go. What I offer to the Green Party is somebody who is able to win the seat he ran in 2019. We came a close second here in Esquimalt, Saanich, Sooke, and next time we will win. It's critical to elect someone who can win the seat, because if we don't elect a leader who can win the seat, we have a problem on our hands. Secondly, C'est essentiel d'avoir un candidat pour le leadership qui est élu, qui est parfaitement bilingue. Il faut qu'on puisse gagner les débats des chefs. Il faut pouvoir gagner sur le terrain, faire la porte-à-porte dans les deux langues. I also understand the Greens in my bones. I've served in 2 shadow cabinet positions thanks to Elizabeth May as justice critic and as democratic reform critic. I'm a listener, I'm a builder, I'm a uniter. That's what I have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Andrew, you're up.
Canadians will vote for someone that they can relate to. Not necessarily someone that looks the same or acts the same, but someone that they can relate to. And that's me. That's why I would be the best leader for the Green Party of Canada. Because I know what's going on from being a 4-time Green Party candidate. I know what it takes to win. And I've talked to many, many people in my 4 elections. And I know that if we stay in the center and attract as many Greens as possible to our platform and to vote for us, that's our ticket to win. The climate emergency requires all hands on deck. So we need to be a big tent party and approach and attract as many people as possible. And the best way to do that is to talk about policies that help people that are fiscally responsible at the same time. So in closing, could everyone just please sign our nominations? It'll help all our candidates, and think about donating a small donation to 2 or 3 candidates that you like. That will go a long way to helping everyone, because that goes to the Green Party to make us have a strong campaign in the next election. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And Judy.
Excellent. I think as leader of the Green Party, it's really important to know when to take a stand and when to show compassion. It's critical that we don't continue to allow predatory practices. There's nothing wrong with making a reasonable, comfortable living, but when that living or that profit is made on the backs of people or the planet, that's where I draw the line. I am a proponent of actually having legislation for ecocide. We also have to be looking at consolidating and working with all the peoples across Canada. I would love to see a Council of Nations where First Nations are included at the table. We learn from them and we build a new Canada together. We redefine that together. We have to be able to build across party lines, across our party. I am so thrilled to be here with these amazing candidates. I want to see every single one of them elected to Parliament, get our official party status, along with Paul and Jenica and Elizabeth in the next election. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. And the last word goes to Dimitri.
Thank you, Jonina and Paul, for your excellent moderation. As I've argued many times on the campaign trail, to my mind, the way to grow this party is to be boldly progressive and to go where no mainstream party wants to go. I think we need to shake up Canadian politics. I think the way to do that is to fiercely defend the rights of workers, call for a truly gun-free society, take on the grotesque crisis of inequality in this country, even start a conversation about whether we should even have billionaires, and do the kinds of things that Canadians very much want us to do, but the centrists and the defenders of the status quo are not prepared to do. Je voudrais aussi voir dans cette province où je me trouve aujourd'hui une vague verte. Les valeurs des Québécois sont tout à fait compatibles avec les valeurs de notre parti et rien ne nous empêche de voir dans cette province une vague verte à l'avenir. Please check out my platform at teamdimitri.ca, and in particular, my economics platform, which we released today. I hope you'll see that this is the kind of boldness we need to see from Canadian politicians. Thank you.
Thank you all for stepping up and running for the leadership of this party. This is an amazing team of candidates. And for those of you out there who want to find out more, please visit the Green Party website and greenparty.ca, the leadership contest. There's a nomination form, as Andrew was saying. You can nominate any candidate you like, or all of them, to encourage them, because they need nominations from all the different regions across the country, and it's an important part of the process. So if you're impressed with what you saw, please dig in further and learn more about these candidates. I'm looking forward to having you all in the House of Commons with me. So Vicky, did you...
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much again to all the contestants. It's been wonderful to have you here for another town hall, and For the people who've stuck with us, thank you again. We have one more of these if you want to tune in on Thursday night. We'll have our Ontario Regional Town Hall, and that'll be from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And you can register for that at greenparty.ca/leadership contest, where you can also find all the donate links and links to these contestants' websites, social media, and so on. So please do join in the conversation. There's less than 2 months left until voting opens. And if you are not yet a member, or if you have friends or family members who might want to join the party, they should do that before September 3rd so that they can vote in the contest. Thanks so much again to everyone who participated tonight. It's been so much fun, and see you on Thursday.
Thanks, everyone.